I was curious about what was going to happen, so I decided to sneak in another read aloud today, but I'll post it for tomorrow. And when we left off, they were having the really funny conversation with Henry, the ice cream scooper, who gives them whatever he feels like giving them instead of what they order. And he was talking about a rodeo, and Connor and Avon were very confused about this discussion of a rodeo. And Connor had just whispered to Avon, "That was so weird." "I know," I whispered back. Henry placed a scoop of chocolate on the counter. Darn it, I was never going to get my mint chip. And Connor carried it outside for me. We sat in the rocking chairs on the porch again while I ate my ice cream, holding the spoon with my toes. Connor barked at a couple of visitors passing by. They looked up at him in surprise, and then they saw me, and they were extra surprised. "I hate it when people look at me," he muttered. "Me too." Connor turned his attention to me and said, "You're really good at that." "At what?" I asked him. "We know that. Eating ice cream." "Wow. How many people do you think get complimented for how good they are at eating ice cream? I guess it's 13 years of practice that makes it such an easy thing." Connor said, "It's a pretty good skill." But I only replied with, "Well, anyone could do it if they had to." Connor shrugged. "So, what do you think that was all about in there?" "I have no idea. Henry is a very confused person. He didn't realize I didn't have arms. And what was the deal with the rodeo?" Connor and I heard a squeaking sound, and we both turned and looked at the soda shop window. Henry was cleaning it with a spray of whipped cream. He waved at us through the smear, and Connor waved back, and he said, "What is wrong with him?" "Mom says he has dementia," I said. "I guess it makes him confused and forgetful, and he's super old, too, obviously." "Do you think he knows anything about the Kavanaughs?" Connor asked. "Well, he's worked here since forever, so if anyone knew anything about them, it would probably be him. He just didn't seem to understand anything." I watched as Henry scowled with a glass with a "why isn't this cleaner working" sort of expression with his arms crossed. I smiled at him and his face brightened, and then he disappeared, apparently not concerned at all about the creamy window anymore. "Why do you think the Kavanaughs are so secretive?" Connor asked. "I have no idea." I thought to myself for a moment, maybe they're criminals hiding from the law. "Or maybe they're famous," Connor said. "Yeah, maybe they're famous members of a boy band and they don't want anyone to know that they also dabble in Western-themed amusement parks because that would ruin the cool pop star image." Now the storytelling gears were really rolling in my mind. Or maybe they're escaped rodeo clowns, and the rodeo clown mafia is out to get them. Connor chuckled. "Why would they be out to get them?" "I don't know. Maybe they pulled a prank on the wrong person, Maybe they shot someone they shouldn't have, or with flowers that squirt water, or maybe they hit someone on the head with a squeaky foam hammer and that person did not find it funny, and now that person is out for revenge." I had to admit, I was getting a little unbelievable. "Or maybe someone's already gotten their revenge on the Kavanaughs," Connor said. "Maybe they're dead." He looked so serious that little goosebumps broke out on my legs. A loud beeping sound startled me, and I looked down Main Street and saw a large red truck backing up to the steakhouse. Mom walked outside with a clipboard in her hand. I turned to Connor and said, "Have you ever pulled any pranks?" He shrugged. My friends and I toilet papered a teacher's house a couple of years ago." "Don't do that." And he grimaced, "But we got in a lot of trouble. What about you?" "Well, I don't know. It's no big deal, but I only pulled just the most awesome prank of all time." "What'd you do?" Connor asked excitedly. "Well, back in the 4th grade, we knew we were going to have a substitute teacher one day because our teacher had to go to a funeral. She was my best friend. Emily took these from one of her mom's mannequins." "Took what? And why'd she have mannequins?" "Well, The mom did a lot of sewing and stuff, and I think that she used the mannequins to model her clothes and to take pictures or something. Well, anyway, Emily brought them to school in her backpack, and they were really big, so the hands stuck out the top. Oh, like zombie arms, Connor said. Yeah, it was like Night of the Living Dead. So anyway, when we got to our classroom, our covert operations went into effect. Emily and my other friend Matthew tried to help me secretly stuff these mannequin arms into the armholes of my long-sleeved t-shirt. But the tops of the arms were too big to fit the sleeves, so we had a brilliant idea. We'd stuff them down through the neck hole. The arms were so much bigger than my sleeves that they stuck out at the bottom, and I totally looked like a mutant with arms hanging down way by my knees. But we decided that we'd come too far and had to go with it anyway. Matthew held both of the mannequin arms to hold them up, and when the teacher called out for one of us to take our seats, I yelled, "Matthew, let go of my arms!" And he pulled out one of the fake arms. The idea had been that he would basically pull my arms off and then hold them up over his head in triumph and maybe cheer like a barbarian or something. That's cool, Connor chuckled. Yeah, I said. It would have been. What our dumb fourth-grade brains had failed to realize, though, was that because the arms didn't fit up my sleeves, they wouldn't completely fall down my sleeves either. So my arms got stuck halfway out. Matthew yanked and yanked and yanked, but they wouldn't come out of my sleeves. So what happened? Well, since the arms weren't coming out of the sleeves and our plan was totally falling apart, I started crying, "Oh no, my arms! You're tearing off my arms! I can feel my arms coming out of their sockets! Oh, my poor arms!" And everyone was laughing, but the sub had just started to stare at us. Matthew gave up and went back to his seat, and so did I. My sleeves were so stretched out that the arms now dragged on the floor next to me as I walked. I had to maneuver around them just so I could sit down at my desk. Connor covered his mouth. "Oh no, did you get in big trouble?" "No, the sub was actually pretty nice. She didn't tattle on me to the principal or anything like that, though she did make me wear those stupid arms until lunchtime." Connor laughed. "I bet you looked pretty silly." Yeah, I did. I don't know if I'd call that the most awesome prank of all time, though. Well, yeah, I guess it was kind of a failure. Yeah, I'd call that an epic fail, Connor said. I looked down at my bowl of ice cream, already melting into a soup in the heat. I didn't feel like eating it anymore. After all, I had really wanted that mint chip. "You want the rest of this?" I asked Connor, and he shook his head. I turned my attention back to the steakhouse. "You know, the gun show is starting in about an hour." I grinned mischievously to myself. If I had hands, I'd be doing the evil finger-tapping thing right now below my chin. Connor gave me a confused look. "What? So?" I put my ice cream down and jumped up from my rocking chair. "Follow me." Connor followed me to the steakhouse where Mom had finally finished up with the delivery and the truck had left. We snuck around to the back entrance and made our way to the kitchen where cooks, busboys, and servers were all bustling around getting ready for dinner. We stood secretly behind the giant commercial fridge. Connor and I watched and discussed as a busboy mixed a giant vat of coleslaw with his hands, his arms buried all the way up to his biceps. He was wearing a tank top, and we saw that he had coleslaw juice dripping from his armpits. Connor made sort of a laughing, gagging sound beside me and said, "Remind me never to get coleslaw here again." Connor giggled. He needs to probably wear a shirt instead. "What y'all doing in here?" we heard from behind us, and I whirled around to find Josephine standing behind me, her arms crossed. Josephine had already introduced herself to me the day we moved into the Stagecoach Pass. She had come to Arizona from Texas, where she was only a teenager and had been working at the park since forever. She was currently serving, hosting, and doing all kinds of jobs for the steakhouse. Seemed to me like she kind of ran the place. She was probably 80 years old, but she could still carry one of those giant trays that had a dozen bowls of cowboy beans. I thought quickly. Mama just told us to grab a couple of steaks for dinner. Josephine gazed at me with a strange look that she had given me the first time I met her. Sometimes when I was in the steakhouse, I'd catch her staring at me from across the restaurant. I was used to people staring at me, but this was a different kind of stare. Well, she was just in here, your mom. Josephine scratched her cropped red hair, obviously dyed. No 80-year-old had hair that color. Why didn't she just take a couple then? She asked. I shrugged and said, she forgot. All right, grab them and then stay out of the way, darling. It's dinner starting soon. She plowed through the swinging doors that led to the dining room like she was on a serious mission. Connor opened the giant commercial fridge and grabbed 2 thin cuts of steak. We rummaged through the counter drawers until we found some kitchen twine and a pair of scissors, and we made our way upstairs into the apartment. I was relieved to find the apartment empty. Mom must have gone off to deal with another job or crisis. It seemed like the work here just never ended. It was sloppy and haphazard, but Connor managed to dig a hole in each of the steaks, tie the twine through them, and then tie them around my t-shirt sleeves, going through the arms and the neck hole. I loosely draped a cardigan over my shoulders, and we made our ways downstairs to watch the gunfight, where a small crowd was already forming. Don't be so nervous, I told Connor as his ticking increased. It's just that there's a lot of people around, he stuttered. Yeah, like there were 4 people standing beside us. We had to wait only a minute before the cowboys came out and started yelling at each other. I tapped my foot while they went through their daily spiel and act. Finally, the moment came when the blue-shirt cowboy, who always happened to be the server at the steakhouse, raised his gun and pointed it at the cowhide chaps cowboy, who also worked in the souvenir shop, and shouted, "When I'm done with you, there won't be anything left to snore." I made sure I was standing behind the cowhide chaps boy. Blue-shirt cowboy always missed chops cowboy with the first shot, but he wouldn't miss today. At that moment, blue-shirt cowboy fired. I cried in pain and struggled and shrugged my cardigan dramatically off my shoulders. Connor snickered beside me with his hand over his mouth. A couple of kids standing nearby screamed in terror, and their parents looked alarmed for about 1 second, all the time it took to assess the situation. Come on, clearly. It was 2 steaks clumsily tied to a t-shirt, not 2 shot-up arms. The cowboy stopped mid-fright and stared at me, probably to make sure that my steak arms were really steak arms. And as the little kids clung to their parents' legs, they were wondering what was going on too. The fight was all messed up now, and the people started disappearing back into the rest of the park, and the cowboys just glared at me. Connor draped the cardigan back over his shoulder and smiled slightly and said, "Sorry, I just didn't mean to mess up your show." The next morning, the cowboys went to complain to Dad about my shenanigans, and he and Mom and I sat in the kitchen over bowls of cereal after they busted me. "The goal, Avon," Dad said, "is to bring visitors into the park, not to scare them out of the park." He threw his hands back, and I nodded an understanding. "Yeah, it won't happen again, Dad." He gave a satisfied nod and pushed his bowl away. He stood up and kissed the top of my head. "Have a good day at school, Sheebs." After Dad left, Mom and me pursed her lips, and she took a bite of the cereal and said, "But you know, dear, that was a good one." Yeah, it was, I said, and we finished breakfast together, communicating only through overly stern looks and repressed giggles. And that's the end of the chapter.